or something where they were built just to have people collect and hang out. Maybe they were ahead of its time. That's what it kind of reminds me of, those experiences.
And it takes you guys few years to get a big title out, right? A lot of years. How do you sort of pick some of these signals that you want to sort of hone in on? Like, do we want to make a battle royale Mortal Kombat or whatever it is? There's signals from the market, and what do you sort of incorporate into the next version or the next game? I guess. Yeah.
For us, I guess we don't want to like directly chase something, um, a fighting game is a lot different than a game like Fortnite or something like that. There are certain like aspects of it that we've identified that we kind of feel, oh, we could do something with that, but not so much as like, let's just do a better job than Epic with Fortnite. You're not gonna from our perspective, that's not something we're going to try. It's more just identifying the general trend and seeing if that's something you can apply to your game.
One of the
And
things I think
TQ,
we've seen,
yeah,
one
go
of the
ahead.
things I think we've seen in the industry is, with mobile gaming, there wasn't just the disruption of a new business model, which is free to play, but there was so there's a cross pollination that was going on behind the scenes of that free to play model and the people making those games and making free to play games moving from mobile to console or mobile to PC and bringing some of that philosophy with them, right? So you're starting to see PC and console games start to layer in features that are meant to draw in users. User acquisition became more and more and more important, um,
Yeah.
and we're seeing now that games like Call of Duty is a perfect example where Matt was saying 5 years ago you would never see a Call of Duty that was free to play and on mobile. Now it's there and it's just gangbusters. And I think another thing that mobile did, or mobile identified, I think it surfaced, was the idea of telemetry or data driven decision making. So in a free to play business model, you're seeing a lot of watching the data stream in and understanding where the friction points are in the gameplay experience, understanding what's selling, what's not selling, and letting that data help inform your decisions. It doesn't make your decisions for you, but it gives you a good indicator of what the likelihood of success if you follow a certain path. And that philosophy is being translated into how people select games, how people select licenses, how people are selecting platforms or what their target platforms are. This data is giving us much more insight into the consumer and into the business than existed, say, 10 or 15 years ago, where it was more, there was more art than math, I suppose, in the game making of like, it feels good. We're gonna make this. We're gonna put it together. We hope that people enjoy it. Now it's let's do this number crunching. Let's figure out what the audience wants and see if it aligns with our goals as a team and as an organization.
Ed, we never got around to this question, but what is your definition of a next generation game? We've got the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X out this week. What's next generation to you?
I think at the highest level, I feel a next generation game is a game that strives to deliver experience that wasn't in or the previous generation of games. I think you can break that down to a number of components at the end of the day, but each new generation, console brings something new to the table that couldn't be done before. The first thing everybody thinks of is graphics. I think the console manufacturers have figured out that graphics isn't the only thing that's going to be next gen. To me, the fast load times is going to be the biggest kind of game changer. Whenever we're working on a game, we're used to a certain throughput of data. How fast can you get your level loaded into the game? And we spend so many tricks figuring out how to disguise that for the player. But at the end of the day, it takes, 20 seconds, 30 seconds to load in a level. And we need to
Mhm.
mask that as much as possible. Suddenly, that restriction is in large part lifted from us.
Mhm.
And I think that we're not even going to see the biggest wins of that until maybe the second wave of games. And
Mhm.
that will be a really telltaling, it'll really reveal where next gen games are going. But at the end of the day, I think they're just all striving to do something that previous
Mhm.
gen games did not or could not do.
I can vouch for some of that. I got to play a bit of Miles Morales, and uh, usually I play with my phone by my side because it's my second screen that I can look at while I'm waiting for the screen to load. And I did that earlier, and then it came on so instantly that I was going to go away for a while and come back, but I had to just pick up the controller and start playing because the game starts instantly. But I've also been playing an embargoed game this week, and the load times are still there. Right, there's still something that they're using some tricks to sort of uh, make you think that you can enjoy some content for a little bit before the game actually loads. And so
Yeah.
um,
I
I am
suspect there
looking
might be
forward to yeah.
I suspect there might be some games that haven't really applied that yet or weren't designed from the ground up knowing that data is so much more easily accessible, so quickly accessible. And when
Mhm.
those games hit, I think you're really gonna see a shift in decisions in game design that are made that didn't have those restrictions on. But there will be some games that have their template of an experience that they're going to bring over to the next gen consoles and maybe won't be showing off that feature quite as much.
Yeah, I think there's some complications here too, where the multiplayer games, you may load it faster on the new consoles, but you're going to have to wait for the cross generation consoles to catch up, and so you may stay in the lobby a little longer just because they're loading the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One players or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what we see and how this changes over time, as you say.
Yeah, you
Um,
might see more single player games or something.
yeah, and TQ, we know that VR isn't hitting like most of the sales targets that people expected. Way back in 2016. It is big. It's growing from like 6 billion on this year on to maybe 11 billion pretty soon. But it's also tough to see whether VR is going to be the way that everybody wants to play. And like, what is some of your argument uh, about about that, and whether VR can overtake uh, uh, other ways of playing?
Well, I don't think it's a question of, well, should it overtake or does it need to overtake? I think it needs to merge in a way that feels organic and accessible. So the idea of, and this is why, one of the reasons why we're chasing cross reality, and that is to bring VR and traditional 2D or flat screen gaming closer together into the same space so that it's not a competition, it's not two modes of play in parallel, it's two modes of play brought together, and that is going to create a greater and more fulfilling experience for the user. And it's also going to bring more consumers to whatever product is offering that experience. So I've seen the articles that VR has been 5 minutes away for 8 years now, and I think the interesting thing is that it is edging closer. It is getting better. It is lowering its barrier to entry with uh, in previous generations, VR was tethered in a very big bulky headset, and that was a $3,000 unit, and then you had a PC that was another $3,000 just to run the games that you're playing in VR. So there's a financial and physical barrier to entry to VR, and over the years, you're seeing that barrier get pushed down, down, down in the form of Quest 2. Now we're untethered. Um, the unit's lighter, the unit's more affordable, the unit's more available. So you're gonna, and this is an unfortunate, benign side effect of our current conditions in the world, but people are looking for that escape more and more, to sort of get out of their homes, even if it's virtually. And they're looking into games because games are inherently aim to entertain.
Yeah,
And
I want to go back
VR,
to something you talked about earlier. The metaverse.
mhm,
We have seen this frustration with the Zoomverse as well, and everybody's wishing that we had something like the metaverse from Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash novel or Ernest Cline's Oasis in
mhm,
Ready Player One. They painted such visions of much more interesting ways to communicate with people than on Zoom video calls, which is what we're stuck with in the pandemic, I guess. And
mhm,
uh, yeah, I do wonder, and that this is also why we're doing our event in January 26th, 27th, where we really are focusing in on just what the metaverse is going to be like. But I am interested, to see like what you think about like how is this metaverse going to happen? What shape might it take? What could you do in it that is next generation? I guess.
mhm. Well, I think it's, some of the cornerstones of VR are haptics, immersion, locomotion. These are all, foundation stones for VR. So, um, to your point, um, books like Snow Crash, um, books and films like Ready Player One, Star Trek's Holodeck, they all paint a very fantastical picture of what a metaverse can be. And what people fail to realize is that VR is a very, very young medium. We're barely out of the 2600 days of VR, but because the computers have to be so sophisticated, because the hardware has to be so sophisticated, it seems like that it should be much further along than it is. So even though we have these wonderful goalposts set in other media, the actual journey there is a much slower and methodical, step by step process. But to answer your question directly, Dean, what I think people will want is that what they've seen on TV. They want to be able to be completely immersed in a world. They want to be able to have that haptic feedback of being able to touch something and have the things that they touch have a different feel,
Mhm,
that from one another based off of physics, based off of what the object is. They want
mhm,
to be able to find their friends there. They want to have their second life or their alt space VR. They want to have that second digital world. So it's a big ask. It's a big
mhm,
challenge, but I think there's not just VR, but VR in particular is looking
mhm,
to the metaverse as an ultimate goal. But
mhm,
many other games are contributing to this, and hardware is contributing to this. Like MMOs are contributing the multitudes. Traditional games are bringing in mechanics. Free to play is bringing in retention. VR is going to bring in immersion and that the feel of being there.
mhm,
PS5 and Xbox next generation of consoles are bringing the haptics so that that feeling, that texture of the world is
mhm,
there. So I don't. I'd love to say in a biased way, VR is going to take us to the promised land, but I think it's going to be VR and
mhm,
hardware and different gameplay styles and different contributors are all going to what Ed said before, converge. And out of that convergence, we're going to get like our first taste of Metaverse.
Ed, can you drop everything and do a Metaverse game?
I'd love to. Like at the end of the day, though, like TQ was saying, I do believe that if you choose the word, pick a word like immersion, maybe, or is a big part of what next generation is going to be. You can do it with VR. I think Sony certainly recognized it with their new controllers, and I believe all of these things, as well as pretty graphics, which everybody kind of goes to in the very beginning to define next gen. But all of these things, I think, are part of what is bringing gamers together. Microsoft, they have two consoles. So there's a version that the super performing one, and there's a version that perhaps more people may buy. But at the end of the day, it's all about just bringing more players into this the space of entertainment called of games, and I think we're going to see a big result as a result of all of those things here.
And by the way, for the audience,
oh,
sorry.
I was just going to say,
we're just going to take some questions pretty soon. But, yeah.
Sure. I was just going to say, Ed, if you want to make a VR game with us at Servius, we'd be happy to team up with you.
Okay.
So Matt, what do you think this cycle is going to be like? There were some rules that we've seen in the past, like Ubisoft in particular would always introduce the brand new intellectual property at the beginning of a console cycle. We have a very different sort of feeling to this one because of the backward compatibility for the consoles. How would you sort of describe how this is going to unfold, and does brand new IP really pay off at the beginning of a cycle?
Right, it's certainly a different world back in the, say, PS2 or original Xbox or even Cube era. When the new console showed up, you had maybe 15 games to compete with, and your new IP could certainly shine when the competitive set was so limited. Yesterday, I fired up the Series X. I looked at my library, Game Pass Ultimate, and EA Access titles available to me, and it was probably 700. In some of those games, I've been playing for years and have friends in those games that I'm not going to stop playing just because it's a new generation. So the idea of like the hard starts and stops of previous generations is definitely a thing of the past. And I think one of the defining characteristics of this generation is basically the end of generations in a sense. Like the technological generations will continue perhaps at a more rapid rate. We saw the iterative consoles of the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro last gen. Perhaps we get more frequent tech upgrades now that it's all x86 architecture and relatively easier to develop for than, say, like the Cell Proc on PS3. But it's a much more competitive landscape now. You're not only competing against brand new games, you're competing against Rainbow Six Siege, who people have been playing for hundreds, if not thousands of hours and have whole social networks built into. So, launching new IP has always been a big risk investment. That risk is only getting higher. And those follow-up games, like the idea of, launching a new IP, establishing a franchise, and then following it up with sequels, not as high a likelihood of success as we used to see there. And games that have followed, say, the Destiny model have had a hard time following Destiny. There's still only one real Destiny-style game. So with backwards compatibility and all these titles available and the live service components of these games, it's more competitive than ever out there.
Interesting. I'm also curious about what you think about the cost of making games. I tried to decipher the cost of Red Dead Redemption 2, which had as many as 2,000 people working on it at a time over the course of 7 years. And that game may have cost around $900 million to make and to market. And that would suggest that it may have broken even around 15 million copies sold. Fortunately, Take-Two said last week that it has sold more than 34 million copies. But it was an interesting contrast to God of War, which was made with 300 people over 5 years. And in every single contest, God of War came out as Game of the Year, beating out Red Dead Redemption 2 at the same time. So I wonder what, I just opened this up to anybody. What do you think about this issue of the cost of making games?
That's certainly a challenge. It's certainly, with every generation, the average cost of how much, at least for AAA games, cost seems to be, growing, at a very steep climb. At the same time, the advent of like indie games and or AA games, the smaller games, they've certainly carved out a niche there. Among Us and Fall Guys for a while and whatnot have absolutely demonstrated that you can make an impact. Word of mouth can carry something that's really strong. But to your original point, it is absolutely a challenge, is, keeping the cost and the time to develop a game. I don't think everybody has 5 full years to make a game. And so the economics of it, time is such a significant factor in terms of the overall cost of a game.
I also think there's a consideration of, the last God of War was the 4th, 5th, 6th in the series. So if you're going to take 5 years to make a game, you're probably going to do it on something that you've established, that is on firm footing, that has found its audience, and there's ongoing appetite for. I think if you're taking 5 years to do something completely original, that's a real risk, because you don't know if there's an audience. You don't know if taste will shift. There might be an audience when you greenlight the game, but they might not be there by the time you finish the title. So, and I think there's also not just the popularity of the game, but the popularity of the developer or the publisher. Their brand is also a big factor there, because the Red Dead Redemption, it has the pedigree of Rockstar Games and everything that comes with that. So that audience is built in. It has an expectation of a certain level of game, and you can take that sort of time to develop a title and launch it, because the audience is there. When you start chipping, if you're putting out games that are underperforming, or they're just they're not executed at a high level, you start chipping away at that equity and that promise and that trust that you've developed with your consumer, until you're spending a lot of money, and there's a real risk as to whether or not there's going to be a return for that effort.
Yeah, if I think of Watch Dogs, I think it took Ubisoft about 5 years to make the original Watch Dogs, and that was a very big bet. But it's interesting how it pays off with Watch Dogs 2 or Watch Dogs Legion, getting bigger and bigger audiences, and that's some of the magic of games, in contrast to things like movies, I guess, right? And it's interesting also that there's different opportunities now. Like, say, if you did something like League of Legends, right? you could make a game that lasts for more than 10 years now, right? And it's the same game. It's just getting updated and updated and updated, right? And I assume that's just entirely different from the way things used to be, right?
Yeah, and also, as you described with Watch Dogs, it requires that the publisher, stay with it, commit to the franchise. I think each one of the Watchdog games have been improvements over the previous ones, and Ubisoft seems very committed to establishing that IP, that game.
Yeah, I think it's an important point that the biggest companies of the industry I think probably have learned these lessons of staying with, or just sort of being committed to their studios, to their game developers, and the things that are really difficult to do, sort of staying with those commitments as opposed to changing the plan every year, right? Yeah. Oh, I think we're cut to some audience questions here. We're getting a few of them in. You can ask these questions in the audience, sort of in whatever venue you're watching, and our people will get the questions over to me. One of them comes from Nicole Lazaro to probe more into this trend for open social interaction, and how will that change gameplay types of games that we all make. Are we going to have like village taverns pop up in Warzone as in MMOs like EverQuest? Are we going to be that social? I guess.
I don't know if you're going to get such a direct application of it, but certainly from the standpoint of the overall pace of the game will need to have, slow times, lull times, lobby times for the players to, relax and have that social experience, maybe talk strategy about how we're going to the game. And maybe it may slow down the pacing of games, because I see a lot of people playing the games and they're interacting while they're in the moment-to-moment events. So I suspect that there will be rooms going to be made for social interaction in games.
Mm-hmm. And another question we have from Kevin Tucker: Do you think VR and AR will be the next wave of game playing experience? How about digital streaming with 5G? Is this the future? Most players are still using legacy systems, and we are hesitant to adopt the new consoles because of cost and high entry point. What's the definition of next gen? Is this a buzzword? He's got a long question here, but does anybody want to seize on any parts of this? Maybe the streaming part, Matt.
Right. So the cloud is still a nascent marketplace, right? We have a number of players that have entered now. Player counts remain pretty light. The internet infrastructure, particularly in the US, has not been super kind to the demands of cloud gaming. ISPs with data caps and all of that other fun stuff is also a challenge. However, in the longer term, it's our position that ultimately cloud will be additive to the overall gaming pie, that it serves a consumer need that isn't currently served by playing on a console, on a TV, or on a PC. So as that technology improves, as connectivity improves, you can certainly see people moving and using cloud in their gaming activity. So ultimately, I think it's going to be additive to the pie. It's going to grow the addressable market for many games. And in many developing parts of the world that do have good 5G coverage, it may become the primary way games are played. It's a long road ahead of us, and I think a good one. But we're just, TQ was talking about, we're in the 2600 era of VR. Like, what are we in for cloud? Like the Magnavox? You know what I mean? So we're still very early, and we have a long way to go.
Yeah, and I
want to play cloud games on the Intellivision console.
But I think I think the long-term goal of the Quest should be to become a streaming platform. There's no sense in being limited to what you can fit into the headset when you can stream over 5G. So I think it's the need to be competitive, the need to have graphical fidelity, the need to be untethered. These are all stressors that are going to force the evolution of VR gaming and the VR hardware to embrace those solutions that are going to allow for the optimal experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe the big lesson for the Quest 2 is just looking at the Nintendo Switch and just seeing how successful that is, and how people are so liberated by being able to take it to anywhere they want and get a console-like experience. So
Possibly.
yeah. Let's see. We have a question, I think, from Nicole as well. Where can next generation haptics take us? Sony's PS5 controllers make a very big promise.
Well,
Ed, I guess Mortal Kombat with sort of feeling the every single punch that you make, maybe. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely. There's fighting games, games where there's interaction between characters. There are certainly moments that can feel more immersive with additional feedback. Obviously we have visuals, we have audio, but suddenly, that third sense of feel, including that in the overall experience of what you get, absolutely is an opportunity to kind of, again, get to that point of a next generation game separating itself from previous generation game and experience you can't get before. But, we absolutely have paid attention to that controller and the opportunities that will allow for us.
I don't know if I want to feel the receiving end of that punch, though, in my game.
No, you do. I think you do.
That's punishment.
Yeah.
As long as the controller can't deliver a fatality to me, I'll be okay. Like, I don't want the skin ripped off of my finger and then just have a bone hanging out. That'd be kind of bad.
Yeah. A little too realistic. Wanda Maloney is asking, what do you think about NFTs in games, non-fungible tokens? We have a blockchain question here. Anybody? I could take this if nobody else wants to.
It's all yours, Dean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do think blockchain, this whole idea of a distributed, transparent, and secure digital ledger has its place. It can identify whether you own something for sure or not, right? And that's important if you're, say, taking your avatar and you're going to move your avatar from one place to another place to another place, as you might in something like a metaverse, right? And if you're able to also take the stuff that you bought in that game and take it with you, like some really big sword or something, and you move into another sword fighting game, and then taking your friends with you, blockchain makes all of that easier. And in a world of user-generated content as well, people can buy and sell things, and they can trace it back to who created it, and that creator can get compensated for whatever other people have bought, or if people riff on something, you can still trace it back and say, somebody who improved upon it can get a percentage of the money, but somebody who originally created it gets a piece of the pie as well. So blockchain has a lot of potential, and there are things like these sort of property trading games out there, like Sandbox right now, and also the real world game, Monopoly-like game from Upland. They have, small thousands of people right now participating, but those people are spending a lot of money. So I don't know whether that's going to be mainstream, but it does seem like an ingredient of the metaverse.
Yes, I also think from your point of user-generated content, that is a whole category that I think will be explored further with next gen games. There's people think about what is the engagement. The developers are on a bit of a treadmill of content creation to keep players engaged. But there's another form of engagement. Like if a game provides a way for players to express themselves, to create content levels or whatever that other players can play, there's a potential almost endless stream of content that can supply the game. We've seen this happening with some titles to a smaller extent, but it's absolutely like something that hasn't been tapped to its fullest capacity, I feel.
Mhm.
I feel like Roblox is a standout in that category of all the user generated content there, how users can get paid for their games, and just the size of the offering there, I think is a really great um, example to point to when we're talking about the potential for blockchain.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they've got 150 million monthly active users, and I looked at the top 10 games that have been played on Roblox, and it's all very Lego-like and all that. But each of the top 10 games has more than 1 billion plays, and that is amazing, right? So people are playing these user-generated content games by the billions, right? So that's cool.
Absolutely.
Mhm. So Ed, you knew this question was coming, but because we have some people in Oculus venues watching here, and you're in this session about next generation games, they want to know if you're doing Mortal Kombat VR.
I could tell you that we've had that discussion a number of times over the years. It hasn't been for a lack of interest on our team at all. It's first of all, we've been doing games. We're always busy doing the next game, but we've had some really good conversations. I think it's more so of finding that right experience. We don't want to just simply do the fighting game and you're wearing the headsets. It's got to be something that's takes advantage of that experience. And I could certainly say that we've had that discussion, but I can't really announce anything at this moment.
Yeah. So we do have. We're winding down to our last 5 minutes here. Do you guys have games that you really want to play that don't exist yet? And can you describe it in some way? If you can't answer that one, what is the game that you most want to play right now? And I think for myself on that front, I'd put Cyberpunk 2077. But let's throw that open. What do you guys want to play, or which game do you really want to play? Start with TQ.
Like I said, I really want to play that first true cross reality game where we are multiple input devices in the same world cooperating or competing against each other, and in a gameplay scenario that is fun, engaging, that I can have my friends there with, that we can chat, we can do all of these things, and I can be in a headset and you can be on your controller with flat screen, and it doesn't make a difference. um, that's the game I want to play. The one game for everyone. The game that I'm looking forward to that's on the horizon, oh, that's cute, is actually Horizon Forbidden West. I just absolutely love that franchise. I think the storytelling is excellent. I think the world is excellent, and I just want to consume more of that experience.
And Matt, how about you?
Yeah, so my game of the generation last gen was Astrobot Rescue Mission. I am pretty bearish on VR as a market. Sorry, everyone on the conference, but I'm just Astrobot Rescue Mission captured that feeling of going to Disneyland when I was 8 years old, and like a sense of wonder as I looked around in something that I truly had never experienced before. Those are the kind of games that I'm looking forward to. Those kind of games that transport you into a different mindset that you haven't felt in a long time for me. So that's what I'm most excited about and what I'm most in awe of when it comes to developers and what they're able to create. And so I'm just looking forward to more of those kinds of experiences.
You're probably gonna like Astro's Playroom on the PlayStation 5, played with the haptic controllers.
If Target ever sends me my pre-order, I'm going to be so into that.
Yeah. Ed, how about you on your games that you really want to play, and then something that's actually coming?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I haven't played Among Us yet. I'm familiar with it. I've seen a lot of footage of it. I've seen the frenzy. I haven't had. It's just oddly with this pandemic, I'm busier than when we were. Even though I don't have a commute anymore, I'm busier than I was before. So so that's definitely something I want to. I'm very intrigued by the dynamics of that game. And then kind of like what TQ was saying is, I'm hoping this isn't really a game that exists, but some persistent world that every single game device can connect to and play. Whether it's a Switch, a phone, a VR unit, PlayStation, Xbox, something that is this persistent thing that everybody's participating in real time. I think somebody's going to tap into at least something towards that direction. That's the thing I would love to play the most.
So Ed is stuck in the Zoomverse, and somebody needs to create a game for him that he can play while he's in his Zoom meetings. Then you can play it on your second screen, maybe, Ed.
Yeah, somebody make something for my phone or something like that.
I mean, I picked Cyberpunk 2077 because it is a game that is like set in the metaverse, and it's it's a theme and setting that where in our future. There's no distinction between the physical and the virtual worlds, and I think that's really cool. That gets us back to this topic of the metaverse and our future events that are coming up. On January 27th, we've got some folks who are not only thinking of the metaverse as science fiction and not just as a hobby that they enjoyed or a nice memory of books that they've read like Snow Crash and Ready Player One, but people who are actually trying to do this for their day jobs to make it happen. It includes people like Tim Sweeney of Epic Games, people who've built it into their business plans, like Dave Bazuki of Roblox and Hironao Kunimitsu of Gumi. They're all taking this very seriously, and they see the opportunity as being closer than ever because of our pandemic. So hope you can join us on January 27th for that event. As I mentioned, we've got a game startups webinar coming on November 19th, diversity and mental health on December 9th, which will also be on Oculus venues, and another event on February 17th. And also as part of our 2-day event, our partnership with Facebook Gaming on January 26th, where we're talking about gaming's growth. And with that, thank you very much to Ed, TQ, and Matt. Great discussion. Thank you very much, and thank you for all of you for watching.